We knew there was a problem. We knew the government was not reacting. The media was not even reporting when people were walking. There was something. There was a problem. Then we said, why can't we take it upon
All
ourselves?
this. And that's not my job to teach you to steps for solving a problem. You have to figure out the steps. Part of our, I would say, our education system is more causing the issue than supporting it in some way.
I have myself turned away from many things because you can't deal with it. Or we see them and we don't want to see them because it's too painful facing it, because when you face it, you have to deal with it.
We were literally the squirrels in Ramayana that go and put one stone in the Rama's bridge. So we literally did only that.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Out of the Box. I'm Naveen, founder of HLC International School and co-founder of Beyond 8, Elena, Karthavyam, Militwa, Explorers, and Cognify. I'm your co-host for this final edition of Out of the Box for this season. For those of you joining us here for the very first time, we've had expert talks on a number of subjects before this. They were on education, sustainability, public problem solving, fitness and health, online learning, microfinance, a bunch of other things. I'd encourage you to, visit our earlier out of the box sessions and take a look at those. We've put together out of the box really for young people to develop a range of interests, and it's by hearing experts from different industries. And in today's session, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Karthavyam, one of our education initiatives, and how we celebrated heroes in our society. The history of Karthavyam is that when Raji and I, Maraji, my partner in life and co-founder of Everything in Education, when Raji and I started looking at how graduates, students graduating from school didn't understand the vast amount of sociological and technological change that was occurring around us. And they were very well educated in some sense in certain aspects of life, in the science and maths and languages and everything else. But they didn't have a realistic understanding of how the world functions, how their communities function, how the government functions, how can they be part of a democracy. They did not necessarily understand that democracy is also by the people, and they didn't see a role in it for themselves at all, except as recipients. So it was very important to us that education also include that aspect of human development, so that if we want to see social transformation around us, it's important that young people learn to find their place in building the society of the future, building the communities that we want to celebrate and live in. And education institutions, by and large, are teaching young people as if they were machines in a production factory, knowing and able to do exactly the same things as everyone else, almost like we were producing cars and chips and other things. Schools and colleges also needed to think about how these young people really fit into the world that is changing around us. I mean, this pandemic, if nothing else, has taught us that it's a very unpredictable future ahead, and we don't even know which of the jobs we knew before February will still exist. So in such a changing world, it's important that young people who are graduating also develop a sound understanding of the world around them today, and sort of build the ability to be a part of shaping that society, not just be recipients of other people's work. And in that journey, we sort of, Raji and I, looked at how we can help young people look at heroes around us. We typically look to heroes in cricket and in movies and in music, but we don't see that same hero worshipping in the people that are actually shaping our society and making our lives better. And so we started recognizing people that were doing a hero's work in different aspects of our lives. So we saw the need to sort of redefine what our young generation thought of as heroes. I mean, who they thought of as heroes, and whose work they needed to celebrate. In fact, as part of Karthavyam, we also do work in rural and tribal education, and enabling learning and development in poorer communities, in rural communities, and our own thought enablers from HLC, Lakshmi and Aparna lead these efforts. The daunting times like these claim lives and destroy businesses so much. We're sort of like I said, in the midst of all this sociological change. Such times also bring out the champions among us, right? When the tough things around us start to crop up, the tough get going, right? The men and women of steel uplifting their own communities and enabling people with sort of an equitable opportunity to live life meaningfully and overcome their obstacles. And so I'd like to bring on our first guest for today, Dr. Balaji Sampath. He's a very dear friend of mine for many years. Balaji, welcome Balaji. Thank you for being on Out of the Box today. Balaji is an education, he's many things, all kinds of things rolled into one. He's an educationist, he's a social activist, he's the founder and secretary of AID, Association for India's Development, correct? They carry out science teaching and primary school programs and the aid, all the educational development for disadvantaged groups. And they do a lot of work in microcredit and in training of health and human rights and utilization of resources for income generation for poorer communities. So thank you so much, Balaji, for being here today. Throughout this pandemic, I've been seeing all the work that you've been doing and AID has been doing, and enabling migrant workers, micro enterprises, and folks that are hit very hard by this pandemic with no jobs, no food, and sometimes even no shelter, I'm hearing. So amazing work you've been doing. So I welcome you again to Out of the Box. Your work as the chief of AID has been a stellar, and nothing so short of stellar, I would say, making you an asset to not just our state, I think, and the whole country as a whole when we are fighting this pandemic. We also have another hero today with us, a Karthavyam hero from 5 years ago, Anantu, dear friend. He's doing some amazing work talking about migrant workers. I read one of his blogs recently. Welcome, Anantu. Thank you for being in Out of the Box today. Anantu's enabled some 4,700 migrants in this period of the pandemic. He's been helping them get back home in cases when they were stuck, and relief through food and medical attention. But I've known Anantu for many, many years, and he's also known for some of his amazing work in enabling organic farmers and to sell their produce, organic desi cotton. I'm a big fan of all of the things that you do, Anantu. I mean, Tula is like my go-to place for cotton, desi cotton. Tula is a non-profit social enterprise that brings garments from desi cottons. Grown by smallholders and rain-fed farmers, hand-spun by khadi workers, and colored with natural dyes. And it's amazing work. For those of you that don't know Anantu's work, check out Tula and all the other wonderful things that he does. Welcome again, Anantu. For me, it's just been an absolute privilege in helping young people understand both of you as heroes and the work that you do for so many people that affects people's lives so positively over so many years. So let's quickly move to some questions. I'm sure the listeners and the audience are really keen to hear from the two of you. Just quick word to our audience. These are two heroes that are extremely busy in enabling society in hundreds of ways. So use this opportunity to ask any questions that you may want them to answer. So I'm gonna, first shoot the first one to Balaji. What drives you? This is something I've been wanting to ask you for a long time, actually. What drives you to do what you do every day, Balaji? It's just, we're all lost in our world of studying and working and caring mostly for ourselves as we see in society. So what makes you up every day with the same energy and commitment that too in the face of such destruction of livelihoods and dreams?
I feel that it is actually team effort. Basically, we have a large group of volunteers in the field who, if I feel depressed, they come back with what they have done. So suddenly it gives me a lot of inspiration. when I was very down about the fact that you can't keep, like, we had actually provided food to a lot of families, about almost 13,000 families during this. Basically, we gave them like rations for about 2-3 weeks, kind of thing, in about 1,200 villages. And then I was getting depressed that this is not something we can keep continuing. Then one of our volunteers came back saying that there are these people that she wants to give like a small amount as a grant or a loan to get them restarted. Vegetable vendors who getting to get started, street vendors, and that suddenly again re-inspired me to say, okay, actually we are doing something more sustainable long term. So constantly the feedback that we get from the field, people who are working on the ground with a lot of our team members there, that actually is the biggest inspiration for me, because so many things that they face so much lot of difficulty and they still manage to get things done. Then I feel bad if I start thinking about the small problems that I have. So I think these things vanish when you start working with a good team, committed team. I think single biggest inspiring factor for me is the fact that our team is so committed, and they won't let you kind of get depressed or down. If you feel bad,
Amazing.
then immediately they call you and say, nothing doing, this is an important job, get started. So I think
Amazing.
that
I
makes
think
it.
you touch on a very important point, right? That commitment comes not just from oneself, but by positive energy from the people around us that are
Absolutely.
helping us build those communities, if you will. And we in fact, I recently picked up Peter Block's book on community, and he talks about this. He says we are. Let me put that down somewhere here. We are a community of possibilities, not a community of problems. Community exists for the sake of belonging and takes its identity from the gifts, generosity, and accountability of its citizens. People like yourselves, I think, it's not defined by its fears, its isolation, or its penchant for retribution. So I think it's very well put answer, Balaji. Anantu, I want to bring Anantu into this conversation. Talking about communities, you've been a champion of building structures on which communities can thrive, especially marginalized communities. Uh, uh, how important do you think is community involvement in the success of any social movement? Maybe that might be something you could take.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, it'll be it'll look like a very cliched sentence if I have to say community is the backbone, community is very important. Yeah, after all, it's just for the community's sake and by the community that these things can be run so that the sustainability is achieved. In our case, always we looked at sustainability in both ways, economic and ecological. So it was always, if it was farming, it was ecological farming. If it was cotton, it was bio-cotton. So it was always important. And another thing is, we can't just be working only in the silos that we are working in. You can't just be talking about just alternate food or alternate clothing or say safe food and just this taught us. There have been times during the disasters, like people have the advantage of following somebody like Balaji Sampath. We just follow whatever they do. It's the easiest thing to do, for example. And say, yeah, and there were a lot of others who were doing. I mean, if it was a floods, we knew what we were doing. This time was a bit more odd for us. I might say we knew there was a problem. We knew the government was not reacting. The media was not even reporting when people were walking. There was something. There was a problem. Then we said, why can't we take it upon ourselves? So we said, some of us will just go to the highway, see what best we can do. If they didn't have money, we'll give them money. If they wanted food, we will give them food. But let us ask them to carry something. So we'll try to understand why they are going. Can we do something around that? So that's how it started. But we never knew it was a whirlpool. Anyway, so
I think yeah, that eye for just looking to fix the issues that are not getting fixed and so many lives are being affected. I think that's what makes all of you, both of you actually, successful in taking not just what you've learned in life through your own education into constructive action for social transformation, but just be able to get started and not worry about the details and get bogged down by how am I going to be any, usually we all often hear, how will one person change the world? And yet we have the father of this nation said, be the change you want to see in society. And I think you're both among the examples of how pick up the problems and start working on them, and good people come along and help you create that social transformation that we want to see. What advice would you, either one of you could take this question. What advice would you share to young learners that they too become problem solvers? The reason I ask this question is there's not enough conversations about problem solving at all in education. It's just, get an education, get a job, live a life. It seems to be all sort of predetermined at some level, and there seems to be no education around how you can be part of problem solvers of tomorrow. Given that the rate at which problems are growing, I think we need far more education on problem solving and problem solving young people. So how would either of you answer that question? How do we create a world of problem solvers? If there's any meaningful way, I would like to hear about it.
Yeah. So can I take it?
Go ahead.
Okay. See, actually, I want to relate this to my classes. I conduct a lot of these science and math classes. Even there, I find that there is a big issue in terms of problem solving. In fact, we have to train students to, because what has happened is in our school system, you are given steps. Like even if you take a math problem, you are not taught to think about the problem. You are taught to think about what steps will basically solve it is already taught to you. You are just applying a procedure. So when you see a new problem, students come back and are saying, "You not taught me how to solve this." And that's not my job to teach you how to steps for solving a problem. You have to figure out the steps. You have learned key principles. You start applying it. And I think in life also the same approach is part of our. I would say our education system is more causing the issue than supporting it in some way. Because
I cannot agree more.
We don't teach students to say, "Here is a puzzle. You figure it out." We are actually giving them solutions upfront, saying, "Here are the steps for you to follow." We are always teaching them steps to follow rather than saying, "Here is a question. You think about the question, you analyze it, you look at what you can do, and you may not be able to solve it in the first step. It's okay if you make a mistake." See, the point that we are afraid of making a mistake means you can never try anything new. So, for example, when I said we will send money to our field, so some people actually said, "How can you send money? How do you send money in a situation like this where there is lockdown?" People from our villages actually found in there, because we actually run evening centers in almost 400 villages, and each of these villages, people started calling me and saying, "We have a set of people here, 4 or 5 families who don't have food today. So what do we do? Can we do something to support them?" And then we said, let's see how to basically reach money to them. And some of the people I was talking to said, "But how can you trust them?" In a situation like this, of course, you have to, of course, there in that case, we knew them. So there was no question of not trusting them. But this idea that you start with a small effort, and then what they did was to go to the local shop, buy it, provide it to these families that they had in their own village. No big travel transport, just very simple stuff. And then they would take a photo and send it on WhatsApp. Good enough, right? And once we started doing, then the same people started going out to a few more villages. And we realized that police and other people, when you talk to them and show what you're doing, in fact, they started taking us in their jeeps. So you no big pass, nothing in the beginning. Actually, all this was done during the first phase of lockdown, where there were very severe restrictions put in. And if you see, ultimately, if you start solving a problem, you find that you approach it in one way, and you realize that that may not be the way to solve it, but another way opens up. But if you sit and say, "Let me dream, imagine the whole solution, let work out entire from beginning to end," you will never start. So what I find is, you take a problem and you start solving, you will soon figure out some solution for it. And or you may realize there is a difficulty, and you will get a couple of people to help you out. And I think more and more people join in and solve the problem. So
I think, you touched on something really, really important. I keep saying this, and at Beyond 8, we keep saying this. Don't get on new bridges thinking that they'll take you also to old destinations. If all you wanted to go to is an old destination, there are old bridges for that, right? And if you want to solve problems in society, you have to get in with that ambiguous nature. We don't know a lot of these things, and I think your ability to connect with so many people across so many villages and work from, how do you build trust? How do you give money? How do you solve their local problems? It's amazing, amazing. Ananta, you want to take a shot at that as well? I'm sure you have a whole lot, host of things to say about this topic yourself.
Yeah, in any of these things, the comfortable, if I'm sitting here comfortably and talking, it's because there is a whole team there doing various things, right? From calling people to firefighting to doing things. It's also very interesting how people come along, always, when they want to do good things. That is something that we have always seen. It's not about the finance, it's not about people, it's not about the legwork, it's not about the energy. everything congregates. It comes by itself. So, a very simple example. I mean, it was not in farming or areas of khadi or something that where we were always working. That some more of our volunteers came in. This was something totally new. I just got up. As Balaji was saying, it was also the second week of the second lockdown period. So not many shops were also open. I started at 6 o'clock in the morning. Just said we will buy some biscuits and bread on the way and go to the highway. Just converse with some of them. Understand what it is. I made two mistakes. The first mistake was calling Arivarasan, a close friend and a fantastic volunteer, at 6 o'clock. And he said, in 15 minutes, I'll be ready. I'll wait at Kathipara. Pick me up. So I had to pick him up. That is a mistake I did. And he is someone who will never want to return home. Even if we are working on the highway, at 11 o'clock, he'll say, you go, I'll come later. And then from there, he'll go to Gumripudi or Arakodam or see if there is somebody in the... He can never go home when there is a problem. So that was the first mistake I did. I calling him. I just wanted to go see. That's where it started. We went there. We went to the highway. On the way, there was a second mistake that was made. We called Tilak Raj. Tilak Raj said, for the last 10 days, I have been feeding. I have been on the way. Why didn't you call me? I am on the highway. Come. We wait wherever you are. I'll come there. I'll join you. He comes and joins us, and the three of us went there. And what we saw was absolutely touching. And so from there on, it took a different turn. It was just a matter of time when he, Prasanna, Ravi,
I
a lot
think
of them
the
immediately
campaigns really just crop out of the woodwork when problems arise, and they identify this very easily, like you both are referring. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one part, but we have to touch more and more people have to be aware of it. See, and all said and done, what we can do is only scratch the surface.
Correct. I mean,
see, in all these years, what we have achieved is 1%. 1% of the market, organic market in India or the world. 1% of the agricultural area. So the upscale has to come only from the government. So we engage with the government, we shame the government, we question the government, we fight the government. We have to do all of this.
Right.
And that's also why I say people will have to pitch it wherever possible. Come and talk about it, talk in public, question people around us. We have to question our government. We will have to question people around us who are supposed to be doing this. If some industry was not paying their workers, whether it's migrant workers or not, we should start questioning them. If people are walking, we all should be, we should engage with that. We should say why they are walking, or can I do something? Can I help them? In fact, it was a very interesting thing that we formed a network of volunteers on the path along the way till West Bengal. So we had people in Nellore, we had people in Vijayawada. All we had to say was, this is a group of 18 that has left. They're walking till Bhubaneswar, and they will handhold from there. And we also had, there are so many young people who came in and joined and committed to be a volunteer, and they handheld all these people. The only strand the people who were walking had was a phone call. So each group had one volunteer who will handhold them all the way till they reach the house. So there are interesting things that evolved out of this. The solutions will evolve. It's not very difficult.
But I think both of you touch on that important point. We can guide young people only up to a certain point based on what we know of the world and the challenges we understand. But beyond a point, that sense of curiosity must come about. And I tend to think that curiosity can be developed only when we sort of give them the opportunity to explore the world and understand it in its real sense. We have a very theoretical understanding of the world in our education systems, and I'm sure both your responses are invaluable to our young listeners. There's a question from the audience. I want to quickly just bring that to the conversation. It's from Nandini Ramesh. She says, it's so energizing to see that the action is initiated by teams and not just by individuals. How does the urge to act become a collective thought? Ooh. Okay, Balaji, why don't you take that? How does the urge to act become a collective thought?
I think there is a inbuilt need for people to work together as teams. I think it's if it is not already a human nature, it wouldn't have been possible. I know that socially we kind of suppress this need. We talk a lot about competition rather than cooperating, right? So many times you just create a small avenue for cooperative functioning. People will do it as teams. Like for example, we just create a WhatsApp group where every time somebody does something, people are afraid. Like, for example, even our own field volunteers were afraid of whether they can go out and meet people, distribute food, identify, is it possible? What will the police do? The fear is there. It's natural. But when a couple of people start doing, always there'll be one or two people who are like a little bit more maverick, right? So when they do and they send out, oh, even nothing has happened to this guy. Nanum poi pannalama. Then they start doing, they post, oh, malave pantala, nanum pandren. So this kind of a thing, right? So slowly starts happening. Like, for example, one of our volunteers in Sivagangai, in a village called Sakote. So she started doing this with about 7 or 8 families. She basically provided, she got some support. We sent it, like first time they actually got Google Pay. We sent some money to her from here. And then she went and bought something and provided. The panchayat leader was waiting and seeing her. He said, enna pandringa? Then when she said that this is what she's doing, nanum pannalame appadinaru. He didn't think of it till then. And then it turned out that we had helped about 7 or 8 people. That guy basically brought in support for almost 70, 80 people. Okay. So, and then it became like an activity that the entire village started getting much more involved in. We've seen this across, where we started doing some support. The police got involved, the revenue inspector got involved beyond the call of duty. So many places, what happened is, like for example, Kanchipuram, we organized somebody to make masks, and our team was in Ranipet near Kaveri Pakam. And so basically, they had to go and get the masks. Everybody poured because all this was at the full lockdown, nothing, no transport, nothing, right? When they were talking about this, the police guy said, actually, we also need some masks for us. When they needed some 10 masks, we were talking about some 2,000 masks. So he said, I will arrange a jeep. You will go to that place together, go get it, and then we'll come and distribute it here. No, solite. We went, got 2,000 masks from Kanchipuram, traveled all over, went to the various local hospitals, sanitation workers, and distributed. And after that, they have been continuously following up. Wherever we need support, they arrange their jeep. So this kind of, I think the fact that they want to do something together is there. Something is preventing people. The moment you say, we are in it together, let's try and solve together, people jump in and start doing. They come in.
In fact, I asked, Professor Ramachandran, V.S. Ramachandran, when he was here in Chennai a few months before this pandemic happened, and he answered this very question, Balaji. He said, people do differently in the company of those who do differently. So we behave differently in the company of those who do differently. So when you went and asked these people, and suddenly when they saw things being done, they realized that they could also be part of such systems. And that's been our goal in education, just develop that range of interest so that when they see people doing interesting, people engaging with society in meaningful ways, they will co-create that ecosystem and that society that we want to see today. So I want to, for paucity of time, I want to close somewhere here so that we can bring on the other two guests for the day. Thank you both for sparing such valuable time, in between all of the efforts that you're taking to be on Out of the Box today. Our communities are, separated into silos these days. Somebody's, Anant is doing one thing, Balaji is doing another thing, Naveen's doing something, Rajesh doing something. We're all, I think, only when we come together and operate together, not just near one another, but actually, working together in understanding the larger ecosystem at play, we sort of create that positive and alternate future we want to see in society, especially in a culture that is much more interested in individuality and competition and independence. I think we have to talk about interdependence a little bit more. Thank you both so much for sparing valuable time. I will request one of my team members to leave your social handles and on our Facebook live session, so that in case the audience has other questions, we could come back to you and reach out to the two of you. I hope the audience was as inspired as I was by listening to these two heroes. They've been dear friends of mine. I refer to the point that if you want to see change in society, we have to be that change ourselves at some level or the other. And like Balaji and Anantu pointed out, all kinds of people start realizing that they could be the change makers in society. All they needed was to see examples of it working, see individuals showing them the way. I want all the young people in the audience to consider themselves as change makers and be a part of a society that we'd like to see flourish post this pandemic. We're all living in troubled times, but there's a great opportunity to come together and show what interdependence looks like and how we can thrive as a society. I'm going to request Raji, my partner in life and co-creator of all the education ventures that I have ventured on over the years, to help us understand the work of two more amazing heroes, Karthik and Aparna. Over to Raji.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Naveen. And a very huge thank you to Dr. Balaji and Anantu for just inspiring us constantly, continuously by the work that they do. There is a very, I'll take on that term that Naveen used, right? This network and interconnectedness. If you look at Balaji Sampath, he is running AID, which is the Association for India's Development. You look at Anantu, he is looking at organic farming. The other two guests, they are all working on, Prateek, who is working on, I'll be talking about Prateek and Aparna as well, and they are working in different spaces. But just look at what this crisis has done. The crisis has actually brought them all together. They're all working with each other, trying to bring their networks together, trying to sort of, grow that network and participate with each other. I saw Anantu's latest post in which he was talking about what AID, Balaji's work had done. And I think unless we actually bring these networks that we are working in strongly together in such causes, then we may not be able to actually take on this daunting task of public problem solving, right? So I would just first like to acknowledge the fact that these people, these individuals have brought their causes together, forgotten what they do originally, but brought those networks into action for the pandemic today. Thank you, Anantu and Balaji, for all that you do and you're currently doing for all of us in this community. We now move on to our next set of very, very special guests, heroes in their own rights, Aparna Krishnan and Prateek Sudha Murali. Aparna, she works and dreams about sustainable livelihoods. She runs Palaguttepalli Bags, and she actually runs this initiative where women from Palaguttepalli community, they make high quality cloth bags to sustain their families through droughts. And if you ever have used these Palaguttepalli bags, I will tell you, they are the best bags for buying your groceries. And the design that they have used for actually separating all those little vegetables that you can bring in, I am a very big fan, Aparna, and I think I just love them, and I hope other people also use them. And when buying this, supporting this, actually can actually make someone else's livelihood prosper and make that livelihood a reality, then that's the smallest thing that we can do, right? And I would like to thank you, Prateek, for coming on to Be On Date. You're our own young role model, imaginator, and also a heritage enthusiast. Prateek runs Sahagamana Foundation. Both Aparna and Prateek, while working in their own initiatives in their villages, they have actually supported Anantu's work as well as Balaji's work for, specifically looking at the migrant problem that we had during the COVID-19 crisis, and also the problem of the underprivileged during this crisis. I'll start off by, first of all, thanking you both for being on our show. Aparna, life during this pandemic, it's already challenging for the general population, right? But for the underprivileged, the villagers, the migrants, this has just accentuated the divides that already existed in their lives. Do you actually see any similarities between the migrant population during the COVID crisis and the villagers that you have been working with through in the Palaguttepalli Bags work?
The last 2-3 weeks have been very intense because we've been helping with this entire effort. So I was one of the people who was following up with groups and holding them to their destination. One thing which comes across is the incredible youth of these migrants. 18 years, 19 years, 20, 21, 22. This is how young they are. Come all the way to a state which is not their own, in a place where their language is not understood, living a very difficult life, saving a little to send it back. Caught in this pandemic, exhausted their savings, penniless, lost. Somehow, together we've sent a large number back. That was the first step. That is a very small first step, because the bigger problem is what is going to explode now. They have gone back into poverty, penniless, and I don't know, the next 2-3 weeks is going to show us a very different situation where they probably want to come back. There is no work, economy has closed. They have no savings either.
I think that means our work is still not done, right, Aparna?
Not at all. It's not even started. It's not even the tip of the iceberg, which we have seen now. One of the youngsters called me up today. As soon as they reach, they get in touch immediately. We're very grateful for very little we've done. We basically put them in a very bad crisis. Some of us have helped them go back, for which they're very grateful, which is a little awkward to even face that gratitude, which for something which is very small. So this boy called up. I asked him, are your parents happy to see you? Mummy, Papa khush hain kya? Papa nahi hai. He doesn't have a father. This boy is 21 years. I asked him, ghar mein kaun hai? He's got 3 younger brothers and a sister. So he's the sole breadwinner for this family. A 21-year-old boy with a widowed mother and 3 younger siblings. There's not much you can say. I said, I'll do what I can. We will all talk and get back to you. One of the first boys I met was a couple of years older than me, 23 years. He had a debt of 1,60,000 on him. So he had come here. He was working in Chennai and Tirupur for the past 4 years. And he had covered 80,000 of his loans. There's another 80,000. So I was wondering how he managed to save up that amount of money, what he was doing. So this is one of those bunk shops you see. So a company ke bahar, I had put up a bunk shop where he was selling, according to him, water bottles and chana. One of those little boxes of maybe some biscuits. I said, how did you save? How much were you making per month? He said about 10,000. I said, how did you save? He said, I didn't pay for a room. So night he used to sleep outside the bunk. Put a small mat and sleep on the floor. He had a small kerosene stove on which he would cook something for himself once a day and eat it over twice. What when it rains? There's a chowkidar with one small room. So he used to let him sleep there. So that is the kind of lives these people are leading. The Golgappa shops we see, or the vendors, all these migrants, in extremely difficult life, managing to sustain their families back home. So this is the kind of society we've created today. This is what has come up in very sharp contrast, that a large section of our population removed from our privilege. Our privilege has created walls where we don't see them, or we see them and we don't want to see them because it's too painful facing it, because when you face it, you have to deal with it. So I can understand people wanting to turn away. I have myself turned away from many things because you can't deal with it. So we've created a situation where a large majority is on the edge, and that is what sustains our privilege. So,
and I think, Aparna, while we say all of that, I think before I move on to Prateek for the next question, I think small acts of kindness, right? In the sense, are we supporting that Golgappa vendor who is there next door? Are we, instead of, just going for packaged foods or fast foods, are we actually connecting with the local vendors in our community? And like Naveen talked about, are we connected with the causes of people who are supporting the livelihoods of people who are poor? I think those are some very small things that we as individuals can do to, while we can always look at the government for solving large scale problems, I think each one of us has a small part to play in this, right? And to just be more conscious, listening to you, listening to the story of this, Golgappa vendor or this migrant who is here in the city working, I think there are so many ways that each one of us can collectively make a difference by small choices that we make, and make a habit of those choices. I hope our viewers are listening to this, and if we can just act in small ways, we might actually be helping that person save those 10,000 rupees so that he can pay off his loans. I think we can actually touch people. So moving on to Prateek, in a culture that is addicted to technology, and you're the one who is talking about ancient heritage and art, How do you, and what value does this ancient heritage bring to the world, Pratik? How do you make that connection?
Two things. So first, when we talk about, say, technology, I think I view technology like a matchstick. You can light a lamp, you can burn villages. So it's up to us to use it to burn lamps, not villages. So like, for example,
Powerfully said, Pratik. Very powerfully mentioned.
because when Aparna was talking about these stories, it was sheer technology that enabled two things, between us getting together, talking, and reporting to whoever is superior. Because we were literally the squirrels in Ramayana that go and put one stone in the Rama's bridge. So we literally did only that. So just escalating issues and everything among us so that they can do something concrete based on the input data that we give. That was enabled by technology. And the migrants that we are handholding, groups also, they had Google Pay. One thing that we need to understand is poverty, in the sense when we see it, is not absolute poverty. They're not destitute people who are here. They have a house. I mean, however basic it might be, they have shelter in their villages, they might have lands, they have a smartphone. They are not people who are literally destitute and begging for everyday lives. So they have their dignity with them, which needs to be preserved. They're not destitute, poor. They don't. You ask them, do you need money? They will say no.
That's so
Can't be there,
important,
sir.
right, Pratik? I think differentiating between dignity of labor and doing it so that they can earn a livelihood, and not doing it because you think you're doing some great, act of charity. I think you're sort of touching upon a very, very important point there. Sorry,
Yeah.
Pratik.
So yeah, technology. Coming back to technology, it was definitely technology that enabled us to transfer some money or do whatever little that we could do, and most of the cases be inactive. In the sense, literally helpless. Yeah, that day around 9:30, he calls me up, a migrant labor who is traveling to Odisha. There is a storm that is coming, and at 9:30 he is walking to back to his village. There's still 30 kilometers to cover, and I ask him, can I transfer some money? Is there an ATM nearby? Can you just go take money and eat, or can you find a dhaba where I can pay the dhaba wala and you can eat something? He says, कुछ भी नहीं है सर, सब तो बंद है, मेरे मेरे सामने तो अंधेरा है. And that mere samne andhera hai is not literally just a sentence that is it's not just that meaning. There's an inner meaning to it. Samne andhera, darkness in front of me,
Hopelessness
is
in sight, literally.
yes, there is hopelessness. And coming to your question on values that we derive from history, I think history just has two purposes. One is to give you a sense of identity, in the sense, as human beings, how we've evolved and why things happen here is because there is some connect in the past. Why I'm wearing a kurta is probably because I'm Indian. So that's something that I'm concerned about. And the second one is to learn from mistakes. Like anybody who reads the World War history will say anti-Semitism is wrong. So these are two things. And when we link that to this crisis, for example, time and again history tells us that it is the underprivileged who are affected at the start of anything that happens. I'm not going to compare this crisis with the migrant crisis during 1947 partitions, but then if you look at partition, if you study partition again, the wealthy Muslims in Delhi where 1 month before they purchased houses in Lahore, in Islamabad. The wealthy Hindus in Lahore purchased houses in Mumbai and Delhi. They were able to come back safely. But then the poor had to take those third-class trains and be massacred in cold blood and lose millions and millions of lives were lost. Only poor lives were lost.
Yeah.
And to deny such privilege during these things is what is a huge mistake that we're doing in terms of crisis. Just one more thing is, when we talk about this, we also should look at history for subaltern voices.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why was Mahatma the maverick? Because he toured India before he could launch even one protest. Because he understood the subaltern voice. And one more thing is, he was not a government official. I mean, none of the freedom fighters were. They were not holding any positions. They had no duty upon themselves to free India from the clutches of the British. But then they took it upon themselves to give up Tagore's knighthood because somebody in westmost part of India, in Punjab, were killed. Tagore felt it upon himself that I cannot hold this knighthood. You are killing my people. He was in Bengal, the eastmost corner of the country. So I think that is something that we need to learn from history.
Thank you so much, Pratik. I think sort of traversing from history to crisis and then finding parallels. I guess these have been, there is just so much history for us to learn from our actions. And I guess in all of these aspects also, it is people such as you, Aparna, who have supported, people such as Balaji and Anantu, who are, having a habit of engaging with the underprivileged, with the poor, with upliftment of our collective society, right? And that is the lamp that we are looking for in your own, in your own words, Pratik. I have an audience question here from Kalai Selvi. How do we get our young learners to participate in these activities? Any links where we can sign up for volunteering? Aparna, Pratik, I would like you both to answer that in your own ways, and we will also ensure that we put up those links in our Facebook site. Please go ahead, Aparna.
The migrant crisis is one thing which is in very sharp focus.
Yeah.
But the crisis is widespread. Every daily wage person, every small person, even in and around our houses in cities, is very badly affected. The roadside tailor, the flower vendor, the barber, the auto driver. One thing which has come out very clearly is nobody has resources to sustain themselves over 2-3 months. That is the kind of society we are living in.
Right. Right.
So one thing to do is to start engaging. We are used to not engaging. Somewhere that divide is there. To start engaging with whoever is in our neighborhood is a very good first step. Our privilege brings upon us certain responsibilities. Now, there are two ways of looking at it. We cannot deny our privilege. We were, by a stroke of luck, born into a certain comfort zone. One thing is to share. As much as courage and integrity allow us to give, there is need. Today, there is a very clear need. You can reach out to people. I have, you don't have, you need. It is taken in a very simple manner. It's not as complicated as it sounds. The other thing is responsible consumption. Now, we have money to spend. One way is to give. Another way is to participate in creating livelihoods, which is the more sustainable thing. So start purchasing. Start purchasing from the flower vendors. Start getting what you can get stitched from the roadside tailors. Start buying from ventures which are doing this in a wider scale. It could be our village women who are stitching bags. It is Tula. It is many such ventures. Now, each rupee we are able to spend has to be spent and has to be spent very thoughtfully in a way that it supports other things. So this is one level of thinking which each child and adult has to engage in, and then we can help in the broader thinking.
I think you're touching on something very important, right? While the question was about how do our young people volunteer, there is one aspect of volunteering, but you're also talking about how we can make those small changes in our own lifestyles by supporting people, right? So there is an aspect of volunteering where you can become an active participant in this whole support system, but even our lifestyle habits, the way we look at living itself, small bits of that can actually contribute. How about you, Pratik? In your experience, how do you look at volunteering, and how do you look at teenagers actually contributing to the causes that you all are close to?
No, I think I'll agree with Aparna when she said, it need not be a conscious effort. I mean, yes, it is good to volunteer, but then these come in terms of crisis and when you need manpower and all of that. But then we can make it our usual lifestyle to, probably choose to wear handloom as much as possible, choose to, go with not with digital art, and probably with art that can hang in our walls from the villages of India and all of that. So I think all of these small changes that we are able to do will contribute a lot in terms of a sustainable, again coming back to the point of sustainability.
Thank you so much, Pratik. I think you touched on something very important, right? While the question was about how do our young people volunteer, there is one aspect of volunteering, but you're also talking about how we can make those small changes in our own lifestyles by supporting people, right? So there is an aspect of volunteering where you can become an active participant in this whole And I think we are running out of time, but I would just like you both to maybe look at this question, Pratik and Aparna. When we have large businesses like thriving because of the scale that they can achieve, because of the prices that they can get, how do businesses like yours survive in this market? What do you need for yourself to survive?
I'll take it
Yes,
first.
please, Aparna.
The odds are totally against them. It's an uphill task. We cannot match. Once the price cutting comes, we cannot match. Because once you're a small business in a remote place, everything is an overhead. Starting from procuring the raw material to sending it out to any breakdown in the machinery to getting it repaired. And especially okay, I'll talk of my village. It is not an NGO. They are just women who've got together. A few of them are walking along with them, helping them. There's no NGO support. There's no state support. What there is extreme commitment of the local people because they realize they are in charge of their lives. Others can help them, but so the quality is what they are able to give. The larger society, when it comes to either Palagotapalli bags or to Tula or the various Khadi enterprises, the larger society has to be a partner in this whole thing. You can't look for the least cost thing here because there are other factors. It's not just money which counts. There is also the kind of empowerment that comes in, the kind of livelihoods that are sustained. The migrant crisis is directly related to what livelihoods you're able to ensure in villages. They are not all separate. It's all part of the same tapestry which is being woven. So the larger society has to come in to help to sustain these ventures. They are able to produce to the best of their ability. They can bring out the best quality possible. Society has to hold their hand at this point, and together things can evolve step by step.
Thank you so much for that, Aparna. I think there is one more audience question from Sapna Sachdeva, where she's asking about chalking out how can we chalk out a plan and contribute effectively without damaging self-worth and sustaining the efforts as well. Pratik, if you could just take that question and then we will move towards closing this conversation. 2-minute answer, please, Pratik.
Sure. So the thing is, an aggregator kind of thing might help. In fact, that's what we're working on. In fact, to get one website where we can, there are people who are doing that. But the problem such an aggregator would face is what we practically face in this effort is the sheer number that is there, the sheer variety that is there. India being India, every 5 kilometers there's new art, there is a new this thing. So the sheer number and the sheer variety, that's both her blessing and her problem. I guess India's problem and her blessing. So that's one thing. And then the accessibility. Because I recently traveled to Naxal areas in the Chhattisgarh and all of that, met the tribals and spoke to them as to what they're facing. Their art is just out of this world. I was in fact in tears looking at, such wonderful art that they have, and they're stuck with so many issues, political and this and that. But then they're such wonderful people. But then if I'm going to sell that in Chennai, to go to a courier place, he will have to cycle for 40 minutes or 1 hour. So it's very difficult. So accessibility is an issue, reach is an issue. And then when we do all of this, will we be able to sustain is another issue. And one more thing is we need to appreciate that art evolves. For example, when I was putting up a post on Mithila paintings from Bihar, Ambika Devi, the artist, has made those characters in her art wear masks and, stuff like that. Traditional art evolves, and they want to evolve along with all of this. And whenever I am making a mistake when I say they want to evolve,
correct,
we want to evolve, and there is where including me, we are all mistaken when we say they want to evolve. It's we who wish to evolve.
Okay, so before we send you off by saying a big thank you, I just want a quick rapid fire question. See, this session, out of the box thinking, is for learners to actually step out of the box and think afresh and be inspired, right? So who were your inspirations? Just in one word, Aparna and Pratik, for the wonderful work that you do, could you name your inspiration, please? And maybe I would hope that the viewers today will be inspired by your work.
I had to pull out one name, maybe Gandhi.
Thank
I was just about to say that, Gandhi. Yes.
Okay, so it's one word.
Super, super. Maybe so, just reflecting on the works of Gandhi and, having that as a reading might be an inspirational work for our learners to do as well. Thank you so much, both of you. I'm just overwhelmed by the work that you do. And I know that during this migrant crisis, I've been following your Facebook posts, and I know that how heartfelt your thoughts have been, your reflections have been, your calls for help have been. And I'm sure that if more people follow your work, Anantu's work, Balaji's work, your work, Pratik's work, that's one best way of actually helping a larger community of people that Pratik rightly said we don't even see. So I hope that after this conversation, we have many more people following your work and hence supporting the work of the underprivileged, of our artisans, of our women, of our villagers, what have you. So thank you so very much again for being with us.
Thank you, Raji.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you, Pratik. Duty comes first, second, and third. That's the famous adage, right? Whichever phase we are in our lives, we have a very strong responsibility or karthavyam towards making the world around us a little better than we found it. And this means helping our lesser fortunate brothers and sisters who are growing along with us as we grow. For any movement to become a revolution, it needs the participation, passion, and commitment of its younger generation. And we hope that our Karthavyam heroes today, Anantu, Balaji, Pratik, and Aparna, have lighted that spark. Mind you, the spark that lights the lamp and not burns a village has lighted that spark in all and given you something to think about for the years to come. And Beyond 8, I would say Beyond 8 is a revolution of its own kind, right? Where we are challenging the status quo in education and giving a new meaning to what education must be. We're an alternative to schooling, and we listen to the learner's voice. And we hope that by doing so, we give them a wide exposure where they can get a glimpse into the many directions in which their lives can go and have the opportunity to be excited by the diversity of choices they have. Do visit our website beyond8.in to know more. We close out the Out of the Box series of talks for now, and we hope to come back to you very soon, bringing a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different, a completely different set of speakers, and we hope to constantly bring you to challenge the status quo, to think out of the box, and do differently just because you are in the company of people who did differently. Thank you once again for being with us here today, and I wish you a wonderful rest of the day and a cheerful weekend. Thank you.